Hello, everyone. Welcome to Carnival of Poetry. So, this is the 27th session of Carnival of Poetry, and welcome here on this Sunday. Thanks for making your time on Sunday afternoon. So now, today, as we always had, like poets from multiple places, multiple countries with multiple voices in our carnival, we also have them today from five different countries, as I'll say. So Irie is from Singapore, and then Rezauddin Stalin, who is going to join us a bit later, is from Bangladesh. Judy is there, who is actually from Philippines, and Nice is from Indonesia, and Karisa, who is both from Indonesia and Singapore. And myself, I think first time in the online version of Carnival of Poetry, and after a long time back to Carnival, I'm Debabrota. I'm Debabrota Basu. So yeah, so previously it used to be India, Singapore. Now people write it India, France. So I am now in France, but it is, I think, the only good part of these times that we got used to it online, and we can held this kind of online session still sitting back in our own homes. So without further ado, I'd like to say a bit of about Carnival of Poetry that I'll always like to uh, start with. Is Carnival of Poetry is this poetry sessions that migrant writers of Singapore organize at the last week or last Sunday of every month. So this is another one, and this is going on for more than 2 years. And yeah, thank you everyone for being there, and specifically SingLit Station to support us through our endeavor. So, without further description or further ado, I think everyone wants to know the poets and read their poetry or know their poems. So, we'll go on to that. So, we'll start one by one as you can see their images. So, we'll start with Irie. So, Irie is a creative and community organizer, and the pronoun that that they like to use is they or them, and that is very interesting. And I would like to know more from Irie about why this choice of words, and what she wants as a message through this, and also about her poetry. Yeah. So
Um,
Irie.
Hi, it's Irie. Yeah, I use they and pronouns because I guess that's what I'm comfortable with. I'm non-binary, which means my gender isn't male or female, but it's something that I have decided to make my own. And in that sense, I don't like I'm not comfortable with people gendering me or seeing me as like female or like a woman because that's not who I am, and I like to believe that I am more than my gender anyway. So yeah, should I start on my poem now?
Yes. And
Okay.
like, if you say something about your journey through poetry, why you write poems, or please feel free to share that. It's always better to know a bit more about poets before listening to their poem.
Okay. So write poems for a number of reasons, including I think just like emotional catharsis, like you want that kind of release, and I guess like I've always loved words. I like the idea of labeling and understanding myself better by being able to put all of these things that I feel and experience into words. So the poems that I've chosen today, two of them are quite heavy. So one later on we'll have a trigger warning for sexual assault, and the one that I'm doing now will be a poem about homelessness. So I was briefly displaced for a few months because of like a bunch of things going wrong, um, and it was just a very frightening time for me. And I wrote this poem in response to like just not having a space and not having any sort of like structure or stability. Yeah, and this poem is called Where to Go When You Have Nowhere to Live. I live in a heartbeat, unfurling wishes. Afraid I settle on the edge of a sliver of a prayer, syllables turned out refreshed. Here I tread kindnesses. Here I do not breathe out of turn. Dust particles glide over me, engulf any common sense. Somewhere in July, I have used up all sunlight. 2 nights from now, I learn to fall asleep in between the crack of the bed and a wall I will never own. On one hand, I have used up my friendship's patience. On the other, I have absolutely nothing else. My skin waxes and wanes with your permission. I am chameleon, I am ghost, I am passing through. If I shrink small enough, no one will see me. If I shrink enough, that does not matter. The hunger runs deep, furrows, carves out tunnels. I count the tiles. Even in free fall, I can't win. My grades plummet better than I do. Love becomes lifeline, but even he is hair's breadth away from dissipating. Everything is too far or too close. No map charts solace. Thank you.
Thank you for reading such a nice poem and like virtual claps for that. And
Yeah.
so, one interesting thing that I found in the poem is the idea of shrinking. So, why is like that, or what motivates that imagery?
I think I was just so aware of how much it required to exist in a space, especially um, when you don't have anywhere to call your own and you just keep wanting to shrink to take up that space to not need anything. And so that was like what called out to me. Yeah.
Mm, that sounds, yeah. Yeah, that sounds interesting. Also, like sometimes, like often we, so this kind of reminded me this thing that often we read in like poetry and literature and all, like when you feel like you are, like your existence is kind of shrinking, your walls are kind of shrinking. It's like you are somewhere, you have nowhere to go, or you are getting anxious inside yourself, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of this reminded me of that feeling, like that's what happens. Yeah, yeah, but interesting poem. Thank you for reading that.
Thank you for responding. Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll go to our next poet, and our next poet is, as I'd like to share the screen again. So yeah, so our next poet is Judy from Philippines. So Julie is now working in Singapore, and like obviously, she wants to share about family, and she has a son and a partner in life. And yeah, congrats for that. That's a lucky thing to have in your life, I will say. And Julie will like to know more about your poetry, more about. We want to hear your poems. So if you not mind sharing that with us and introduce a bit more about yourself as a poet.
Um, Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I wrote this poem because last time when I was in high school, they bullied
Mhm.
me because of my dark color. So I remember that I was crying going back home, and then I just keep it myself. And then I said, one day I will build that confidence in me that these dark colors of mine um, will bring me to somewhere else that will help me to accept myself, will help me to love myself. So I wrote this kind of poem. So can I start reading now?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing like such personal event.
Okay, thank you so much. The title of my poem is It's Just a Color. Find reasons to love your color. You are always beautiful behind that appearance. It's just a skin tone anyways. Love is within you. Do not be so disappointed because you are different from them. You must be proud of your race, your history, and your signature. You can walk above your head to flaunt that sexiness in you. Your character must be your best attire to introduce yourself. Build that self confidence that is hiding for ages. The runway is waiting for you, my dear. Go on. Walk the swiftest way, the extravagant catwalk of your lifetime. This is the history you must tell to your next generation. How Jude battled to be accepted in an era where black became the color of nothingness. But you won right. You deserve to be respected. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for like sharing that poetry. And like you said, this even comes back from your high school times, right?
Yeah.
So you wrote it back then, or like you wrote it much later, like the poem?
Now, I just read it a while ago because I was a member of a platform like we have a prompt daily. So when the prompt appeared, then I remember my experience. So I just wrote it down to share to my fellow ladies that don't be ashamed of who you are. You need to accept of being dark, white, or any color you are. You need to love yourself because nobody will love you like you do.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
One more question I'd like to ask is like, so when did you start writing poetry? Like, so is it from the high schools or is it from like later on in your life, like when you think of these events more when you are not in the
Uh,
village?
when I was studying, I'm writing already, but I don't publish it. I just keep it for myself. I only publish it when pandemic hit us so badly. Then I become the member of a platform. So I share all my writings there to inspire people also.
Okay,
Thank you so
okay,
much.
that's a very nice cause to start poetry, and yeah,
Yes,
thank you
thank
for that. Okay. Thank you, Julie, for sharing your nice poem and also your experience, which is really, I think, one of uh, the ever encompassing experience that we are having this pandemic. And right now, like sharing all your personal thoughts and sharing all your experiences is very essential. And I think, personally, also to me, I think poetry or literature helped quite a lot to get over this pandemic scenario. Like you can read a lot, you can, I think, leave much a different world outside your four walls simply by reading and thinking of it, or writing and thinking of it. Yeah, I think that's the power of literature or poetry that always kind of enchants us.
much.
Yeah, thank you for taking this effort. Okay,
Yeah.
so now, and like any poet, like if they want to ask any question or they want to add any comment, like please feel free. It's not like that I am the only one who is, allowed to question or ask things here. Yeah, so please do. Yeah, so now we'll move on to our next poet. So our next poet is Nice. Nice is from Indonesia, and motto of her life and poetry is encouraging life towards happiness. Yeah, and I think that's a big like thing, because happiness, that's always been a big question for every one of us, and I think more than ever it is still a big question to us. Yeah, and she also won the second place in 2016 poetry competition. Yeah, congrats for that, like though it's been quite a bit of time, but again we can say congrats for that. So Nice, would you like to share your poem with us? You are in mute, so can you unmute?
Okay. Hello
Yeah.
everybody. Sorry before. My poem is the speak is Indonesia because uh, my speaking English is not so good. So I come take better. I take the Indonesia speak like this. So
Yep.
this one.
So let me know when you are gonna start, then I'll share a translation of your poem so that everyone, let me just put it here. So I think you can go on in parallel so that someone can read the translation also, and you can read your poem in the
Oh,
original language.
yeah. This one is the Lara. Lara is the this one is the something is pen like this because I take this one before. this one I got have something like boyfriend like this. Then after that he married like this, so I can take the poem. Then I can share to the my Facebook like this. Then now I still got remember like that. So now I can start.
Yep.
Lara. Kala sunyi kau tiada di sisi. Tergolak rasa yang menyiksa jiwa. Hancur terasa berkeping-keping yang tak ada guna. Suasana panas hanyalah sekitar dada. Seakan teriak sekuat tenaga. Menjerit, hati semakin terjepit. Sakit seakan melilit lekat di kulit. Suara di sekeliling memecahkan rasa. Rasa benci yang tak pernah berhenti. Raut wajah yang dulu kukagumi, kini hilang menjadi misteri. Menjadikan momok di sanubari. Rindu yang dulu kusimpan hanya untukmu. Kini semua telah berlalu. Bibirku yang selalu memanggilmu sayang. Semua pun telah hilang melayang. Kau yang dulu kujadikan tambatan hati, kini semua tiada arti. Luka di dalam dada semakin lama, semakin membara. Rindu yang menggebu-gebu, kini menjadi layu. Thank you so much. Okay, brother.
Thank you for sharing such a nice poem, and yeah, from such personal feeling. So so again, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a few things about this poem. So this is about basically longing and the pain of longing, right? If I'm not wrong. Nice.
Yes, yeah, brother.
Yeah, so is it is about the pain of longing, as we have talked about longing at different places, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, so I think this longing is like a very common theme that when we also look into multiple migrant poems, that is some kind of a recurrent theme that comes back: longing for home, longing for people that you have met long ago, right?
yes, become like that. Become this because this one together very long already. So to the my heart ladies are still so pain and until now ladies are still they have still like remember cannot lost to the my memory like that.
Hmm. Yeah, so yeah, thank you for this poem, and that's so nice. And would you like to like tell us a bit more about why you write poems, or what motivates you to write poem, so or what is your message, as you have said, like to encourage life towards happiness. So what is your message in general when you write poem, or what you generally think when you think of poetry?
Actually, I also like to want to learn speak English. This one I can translate. Then after that, not confident. I want to read the English speak. So, but I'm not confident like this. So just I use my language like this. Sorry, so
No, I think that's fine. I think always in Carnival, like we had this train that we allowed actually, and we asked actually explicitly people to read their poem always in their mother tongue once and once in English if possible, like if it is written in some other language. Yeah, because I think we worked quite a bit of people with like coming from Philippines, Indonesia, Bangladesh,
Yes.
India, and everyone speaks a different language, and most of the cases they write their poetry in their mother tongue, not in English. So it's very natural to read it in your mother tongue and keep the translation on. And I think we are doing it for long, so yeah, it's very
Okay. Thank you so
no
much.
worries. Yeah, thank you for reading your poem. So next we'll move to our next poet, Karisa. So I'll share. So yeah, so Karisa is actually yeah. So we can know the story in a bit more detail from her. So like Karisa is Indonesia raised and like Singapore based. So like we can know what's the story behind that. And she performs poetry on platforms and she writes poetry. So she's obviously a poet of this like interesting, like I can see lots of interesting places like where I used to go to listen to poetry when I was in Singapore, like Singapore Unbound or the Esplanade or Speakeasy. So like I'd like to listen to the story of Karisa from her own voice only. So Karisa, if you, yeah, the stage
Hi.
is yours.
Yeah, thank you for hosting this. My name is Karissa, and so to answer the question about how I started writing poetry, I think I stumbled through into onto some spoken word videos onto YouTube when I was on YouTube when I was younger, and it really changed my mind about like what poetry was, because it was the first time that I heard poetry and didn't feel like intellectually inferior afterwards, because I think at school you're exposed to a lot of like maybe like Shakespeare or Percy Bysshe Shelley or whoever, Byron, and who are great in their own right, but was not an existence that I could ever relate to. And there are all of these like old references that you needed to study in order to be able to understand. And so like, here was this thing that, could speak directly to me, that I didn't have to, have somebody like teach me in order for me to understand it. Like I could just understand it. And that was really, really powerful. And then I think at some point it became, me and my friends had like little WordPress blogs that we would like upload our poetry onto, and it became a nice little way to keep up with each other's lives. And if somebody uploaded something that was really really joyful, then we could celebrate. We could learn about it through their blogs and then celebrate with them. Or if somebody posted something really sad, then, we'd all be like, oh, like, are you okay? What's up? Yeah. And then there are all of these spaces like, Destination Ink, like Speakeasy, Speak, and all of that that had started popping up in Singapore. And it's been a long time since I've been like active, like really active in writing poetry, but that was a really important space for me to grow into myself and be comfortable with myself growing up in Singapore. So yeah. So I guess I'll read my poem now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my poem is called "There Are Many Different Types of People at the Beach."
Okay.
There are the ones who sit by the shore, keeping distance from the ocean's salty prickle. There are the daring ones who dig their toes into the seabed and square their shoulders towards rising waves, sharp at the tip, threatening to collapse onto itself. Sometimes the daredevils get knocked over by the flood, find themselves tumbling towards shoreline. Other times they manage to take the waves for a ride, let it lift them off their feet, catapult it into the blue, and pray, pray that the water land them lightly. There are others still who have grown up by the waters. They know not to trust it blindly, for they have seen the bodies it has swallowed. But they also know not to fight it, to take deep breaths and duck under the waves, scalp of the head, just below the water's surface, and let the crashing of foamy jets onto solid blue roll over them. They will float there as the rumbling passes, and come up for air once it has, wipe the salt from their eyes, and watch for the next one. There are many different types of people at the beach, and there is no wrong way to survive. Thank you.
Hmm. Thank you for the poem. That's very interesting. So, what is the allegory of this beach? Like, what do you actually want to portray? Like, is it life or is it really inspired from a beach itself?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was inspired by like a real experience on a beach in which, I was very young and you know, trying to not really kind of understanding, how to wade in this constantly moving water. I kept trying to like jump up so I could keep my head above the water whenever the waves like came crashing. But then this other kid, who I didn't know, just like randomly came up to me and said, like, you're doing it wrong. Like what you need to do is you need to actually like hold your breath and just like duck down so that the wave can crash like on top of you, and that way you won't be like disturbed. Or you don't have to fight it. And then when I got older, I thought that was kind of a really interesting metaphor about kind of the different ways that different people like cope through life. We all have kind of different things that gives us strength, that is healing for us. And there's no one set way, and at the end of the day, like, what we're all trying to do is just survive a like life that can be very difficult. And so like why try to like police the ways in which people are just trying to survive? And yeah, and I think in some ways like it's not like very evident from the poem in itself, but in some ways I think I was also writing it about queerness, and kind of how there are different ways in which queer people have had to defend our existence, be it through like saying it's biology, like we were born this way, or saying that, it was trauma, or, like, and I think some people have ideas of like, if you're born this way, then it's okay. But if you choose it, then it's not. But really, like we all, like, does it matter? Like why, whatever your journey was, like, does it make it any less? It doesn't make it any less valid, or whatever the way you understand it to be, it doesn't make the fact itself any less valid. So yeah, I think that was like my own like underlying meaning behind it.
Yeah, yeah, that's nice. That's very interesting. Actually, like, when I was listening to your poem, I was thinking of life and different ways of surviving in life. I think, different ways of growing up and like kind of making a deal with life. Yeah, I think like that's I think the power and the nice thing about the poetry that everyone can interpret after a point. Yeah, in a different way. I think there's no one poem. There's like as many readers there are. Those many people. So I think, yeah. That's the nice part. And yeah, really, that's a nice poem. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to like the point of this, how people teach or how people interpret poetry in schools because they're taught something different. Maybe we'll come back to that in a bit or maybe in the next round. Yeah, because that's something interesting I'd like to talk about. Thank you. So, yeah, maybe we'll like to go to the next poem. So, Rezauddin, like, are you there?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so can
Please open my video. Then I can. Okay.
yeah, uh,
Thanks.
yeah, so we can yeah. So I can introduce our next poet Rezauddin Stalin a bit, and then yeah, we can go on and listen to him and like his story of poetry and how yeah he perceives poems. So Rezauddin Stalin is a well-known poet in Bangladesh, and he is the former deputy director of this Nazrul Institute, and he is a quite well-known, well-established poet who is writing for a long time, has more than 100 books, and yeah, that's really, really an astonishing and long-running portfolio as a poet. So yeah, really, we are really honored to have you here. And if you would like to share more about what you think of poetry and poem and what's your view of that, it would be very interesting because again, you are writing through decades. So,
Thanks. I am very grateful to you that I participate here. I am very glad from Bangladesh. You know, we have a great heritage of our Bangla poetry. Our first Nobel laureate, Rabindranath Tagore, and
mhm,
another poet is uh, Michael Madhusudan Dutt. He is well known to our India and all over the Asian poets. And you know that
mhm,
our modern Bangla poet is very standard, internationally standard. And I think that our poets Samsur Rahman, Al Mahmud, Nirmal Dugun, Rafiq Azad, they are very famous poets in Bangladesh and India. And I am
mhm,
poet of 80s. I think
mhm,
that uh, poetry is the actually uh, which I want to tell to people. This is actually I want to throw my emotion. I want to say my all which I can tell to people uh, against autocracy, against the evil civilization, and against the all undemocratic situation. I can tell everything into the poem. So I write poem from my childhood, and now I have 60 books of poem and total books of mine 100. And recently, Amazon published my selected poems of Rezauddin Stalin. And various languages in the world, my poem translated. Uh, and I am very happy today that this is the first time I joined in Singapore. And Mr. Jakir, who invited me here, very thanks to him. And I am very glad to say something here. And my all friends, those who are participated here, and I think that all poets love people, all poets love their language and their people. And in the pandemic situation, the COVID-19 is very dangerous for us, and uh, I say that everybody stay safe, keep oil, and poetry can help us to live, to uh, cover up the situation. Poetry always with us, uh, and I think that our evil motive, poetry can destroy our evil motive. So from 4,000 years after Socrates, uh, our all poets in the world, they uh, their duty is to serve people, to serve democracy, to serve humanity. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for like talking about your experience of poetry and like yeah, your motivation of writing poetry. Yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, if you like to share some poem with us.
Can I first read original and then my
Yep.
then translation?
Yeah. So that would be nice, I think.
Okay, I want to read the first poem. This is the poem in our my first book, uh, Firini Abadho Ami, and the poem, The Lament of Tithonus. Bangla version, I can tell Tithonusের কান্না. Now I read the poem. Tithonus, you know, is a Greek uh, goddess, and he is very well known to Europe, Tithonus.
Mhm.
Uh, and at first I uh, read Tithonusের কান্না. আজ রাতে আমার বুড়িমা জল স্পর্শ করেননি। মায়ের সাথে মাঝে মধ্যে ঠোকাঠুকি হলে তিনি মাটিতে ঢেলে ভাত খান। বয়স বাড়ানো তো মানুষ নাকি পুনরায় নুয়ে পড়ে শৈশবের কাছে। যুক্তিহীন জেদি স্বভাবের তারা সবকিছু অবিশ্বাস করে। স্বেচ্ছা নির্বাসিত বুড়িমার জন্য আমার করুণা হওয়াটাই স্বাভাবিক। আমার তো এমন বয়স হয়নি। তার কান্নার শব্দে কখনো আমার ঘুম ভেঙে গেলে আমিও কাঁদতে থাকি ভেতরে ভেতরে তীর্থনাথ। বুড়িমার কান্না জানি বাড়ির সবাই শুনেছে, প্রতিবেশীদের কেউ কেউ, কিন্তু আমার কান্না আজ অব্দি কেউ শুনতে পায়নি, এমনকি আমিও না। Now I am reading translation. The Laments of Tithonus. Tonight, my grandmother took no food. Occasionally, after a quarrel with my mother, she used to pour her food down on the floor, though she might scoop up one or two morsels. It is said that a person weighed down with age tends to give into the childish propensities and become irascible and stubborn in the nature, not trusting anybody or anything. For my self-exiled grandmother, I feel a compassion that is but natural as I have not yet aged too much. My unfit grandmother weeps fitfully till the late hours of the night, when the noise of her weeping, the noise of her weeping rouses me from sleep. I too start weeping, a Tithonus within. Grandmother's laments, I'm aware, have been heard by everybody in the house and also by some among the neighbors, but none could yet hear my laments, not even myself. Thank
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the poem. So that's very interesting. So so I would like to know from where does this motivation came, because it's always readers can interpret it differently, but like yeah, from your point of view.
Yes, uh, a, a good poem has so many, uh, uh, I think so many interpretation. So
Yeah.
uh, this is the main character of the good poem. After writing, a reader also uh, also put his different meaning. Poet cannot say anything then. Then poet is
Mhm.
aloof, and a reader can write another poem. I think so.
Yep. Yeah, that I agree. That I agree. Obviously, yeah, because like this. So basically, my interest is about this analogy of tithonus. So this, things that is happening, or this weight of the actual life, of the real life, that is around there. But like this tithonus is talking about this weight of this real life, all
Yeah.
sad parts in it, all the misery in it, but he cannot talk of his own misery, and that's, I think, the conflict you are trying to put in here.
Yeah, you are absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely
I
right.
think that's very interesting. I think also, given like most of them, to be honest, most of the males, how we grow up in like our countries, like we
Yeah,
are not supposed to share under responsibilities and under under situations what we
yes,
are actually feeling. I think it kind of resonates with that.
yes.
uh,
And
yeah,
my
and
grandmother.
also like.
This is my actual. This is my. I saw like this. My grandmother sometime he can't sleep, and he wept many times, and he take no food. At night I saw that uh, she's taking no food, and my mother and my grandmother also quarrel to each other. So I understand that it is very crucial time. It is very crucial time to my grandmother. So I write some poem. So I wrote some poem in that perspective.
Yeah, that's very
In
interesting, I
our
think.
country, not in our country, all over the world, when we lose our uh, youthness, then we become day by day old. So when what would happen, we have to go to old home or anywhere, and our children almost go other side. So we are alone. We
Yeah,
have to be alone when we
I
become
I
old.
I see the point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's like, yeah, that's true. And like with this increasing, I think, push, or sorry, I'll say like increasing emphasis or priority on like production and having a productive life, I think made like a bit older people a bit, like, how can I say,
Yeah.
redundant in our values, sadly.
But in all over the world, this situation is like that. I think so. I don't know what about Singapore. You can tell if uh, good.
I think like, yeah, it's roughly similar, and I think in Asian countries still it is up to a certain extent. In like West, like it is, I think, already there. Like after a certain age, you have to look for your own life. You depend on social security, and yeah.
Uh,
So
Social security is very tough in Bangladesh. You know that our social security government cannot give all social security because our economical development is not high. You know that we are growing up. So not like Singapore, not like Malaysia, not like India, but our GDP is high, going to high day by day. So we are hopeful that within short time we will be the uh, mid-risk country. Just we like uh, India. We can now we can tell that we are coming from day by day in good situation in economy.
mhm. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so that seems like a nice set of like different poems coming from different perspectives, starting from Irie to Judy and Karisa and Nice, and also like, so you prefer like Stalin, or do you prefer Rezauddin? So which one should I call?
I prefer both because this is my name. My surname is Stalin, but my certificate name Rezauddin. So my poetic name, my writer's name is Rezauddin Stalin. Everybody
Okay.
call me Stalin. Somebody call me Riza. Modi called me Rezauddin Stalin. But in my village, some of the people they cannot pronounce it properly. They call me Stakin. They call me Stalin. You know that. But
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think that is the interesting and funny part of like being from a village. Like you never mind people mispronouncing it. It just becomes another name. Yeah.
no, no, no,
Yeah. Okay.
this is actually
So
Rush
I will
name.
keep it as Reza, going according to like a Singaporean way of taking the first four letters of your name as your nickname. So like, yeah. So we have heard from the poets for one round, and that's very interesting that we have this idea of longing to this idea of different ways of surviving in life and like different ways of expressing. As we can always see and always say in Carnival is this universal existence of human beings. That's what poetry puts up to all of us, and that like people coming from so different perspectives can write poems, and that we can relate in so different ways. Like every one of the poems like Julie or Nice or Irie, like or even like Reza Bhai's poem, like we can interpret it in our ways. I think like everyone told a story, and like I have one more story to add with that poetry. And that's always I feel very nice about poetry. And like I'd like to read one before going to like other poems and going to the other round. And this is about basically poetry and what I started to think of poetry. So one day, actually, like when I was reading this, I think second edition. Sorry, no, I think we are working on the first edition of the Migrant Tale, and then I was reading these poems. And back then, I was in India, like this puja festivity was going on. So I was in this local train, going on from one place to another, and then I found out this orange vendor. Like in local trains, there are these fruit vendors who go on and who sell you fruits. And then he was kind of like, after a point, he was sitting just beside that orange like basket that he had. And I was seeing it from another corner. So he was sitting here on the ground, and I was sitting here on the chair, and I was just looking into him. So it felt like after a point that basket became his life. So that was very interesting, like that basket and the oranges in there, like he knows every one of them, and somehow he will sell them eventually. His goal is to sell them by evening, but he still caresses every one of them and try to arrange them when he is a bit idle, sitting just beside it. So I found out like maybe poetry to us is something similar, maybe. So that's why I wrote this one called Reflections. I bring them everywhere with me, to every city, to every desk, to every lover, to every day. Sometimes I curated them, like cheap paintings of a drunk craftsman, or just like dishes, ready to be picked and chewed in a hawker center. I watched them to be loved, to be hated, to get touched, and to be forgotten silently. And after all these seasons of rain and snow, I realize now they look like me, or I was always just like them. My poems.
Beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful
thank you.
poem.
Yeah. So I think like after a point, like we poets become our poems and our poems become us. So like they become just a reflection of us.
Right.
And so I think that was the point that made me to write it. So yeah, so thank you for the first session. So do we want to have a break for 5 minutes, or yeah, do you want to carry on?
Okay, no problem. Thanks.
Yeah. So others?
After 5 minutes, you have to join again. Yeah.
No, no, you can be here. We can just stop the recording for 5 minutes, maybe,
Yeah.
or we can cut the recordings for 5 minutes. Yeah.
This is no problem. If you like,
Okay.
you can.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought like maybe. So one thing, can you hear us? So I can do. I can.
No, I didn't think so. When we try to write modern poetry trend is uh, another. You know, well, Islami and any religious poem. Uh, now we never want to write because
Yeah.
religious is another thing and poetry is another thing. Sometimes we can take some essence, so we can take some character for necessary when I feel need to.
Hello, everyone. So, welcome back to the second phase of Carnival of Poetry session today. And yeah, I think this kind of break is what I like to have to give, a bit of. So, we are not in a physical meeting where you say, like, okay, let's stop for 5 minutes and like, let's go for a tea or something and come back. Yeah. So, it's better to stretch your leg. And since you're in front of just a screen, gives you some space. So let's start the next session, and we'll again go in the same sequence that we went before. So we'll start with Irie, and we'll start with her poem, and we'll like to know a bit more also about her poem and the story and the poetry. Irie, the stage is
Uh,
yours.
sure. So the next two poems, one will be like a heavy poem and one will be like a bit more fun. So the first poem is about sexual assault. And this was something that had happened at my university, which is kind of known for its stunts and its treatment of like sexual assault victims. And so I wrote it because I was not just angry about my case, but angry about how my school was treating, people around me, and especially women who were victims. They were just kind of discarding these people, and I felt like this was one of the few ways that I could use my voice for good. The second poem is about my sexuality. It's a very Singaporean kind of monologue on how I grew to realize that I liked women and how I can appreciate them for what they are instead of assuming that they're a replacement for men or something like that. So I'm gonna start with the first poem, and this first poem is called No Undue Stress. So again, if anyone needs to kind of like mute me because this is a triggering, I'm gonna start now. He touches me in my sleep, his hands on my back, my breast, his hands, they were soft as I should be. I dissolve under his hands, boundaries dissolved under his hands. Our tree of friendship dissolves under his hands. My voice dissolves under his hand. Time dissolves under his hands. I am now and forever trapped there, trapped in routes I cannot take in school. I miss all the lectures we have to share. Tell myself that no one goes for 8 a.m.s anyway. I avoid the places we used to eat at. I avoid the places he knew I studied at. I avoid the hallways. I avoid. I am a void that only walks the walls, walks whatever margin I am given, walks the little bits of school I can manage. They give me crumbs and I am starved, so I take them. Dignity be damned. Self respect be damned. I am damned into only this sliver of a shard of a fragment of a path to class, and all my possibilities of existence are narrowed to this single file. I put one foot in front of another. Stay quiet, stay gracious, stay civilized and correct and polite. When requesting that the place I study in is safe enough to shower without being filmed, stay gentle as he was gentle to me. When informing those in charge that someone touched my privates, I don't want to stress them out. I write reform suggestions, but only within the recommended number of pages. I email only the designated people, ask only the right committees, say misconduct, not assault. Wait my turn. Later they will tell me they want to make things right. This is a school. This is a place to be proud of. This has to end now. We have a meeting after this. Thank you for your feedback. So that's the first poem. And this is the second poem.
Quite moving and like I think quite relatable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Please go ahead with the next one, and then maybe we can talk a bit.
Sure. This poem is called "What the Fuck's Yeah" at Girls. Um, I want to be slapped in the face with their beauty. I walk into crowds and then I see their fucking outfits, then their lashes and their makeup. Like, oh, how dare you, cheap? I not say I steam one, but fucking murder me. I see you with your blush as contour and your color coordinated shoes and outfits. Are those earrings from Easy Craftsy, bitch? Yes, just got me already. Can feel my organs being pulled apart. One. I don't know which organs are, but every time I see, I just get ripped apart. All the muscles just torn at the tendons, pain, Then this one my glasses so cute. Fuck, just fucking eviscerate me lah. I have been pierced through the veil. That's not what I meant. But my God, how are you real? We are fucking blessed. Angels walk among us, okay? They really not from this world, eh? We fucking mortals, we do not deserve this. Our peasant brains really cannot comprehend their grace, yeah. They can curb stop me anytime. Just tap on my neck, bro. Just let's fucking go. Kanina, your hair so soft for what? You so pretty for what? You play with my heart for what? Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
That one sounded quite different than the
Yeah.
other forms, and like yeah, that one is more like a, yeah, how can I say, anxious monologue, or like some kind of reflective monologue. Yeah.
I know, yeah. Like I was just kind of like I realized like I would go into crowds, and I would think like all of these things about the like very pretty girls around me, and I was like, wait, this should be a poem, but more than that, it should be a very Singaporean poem because I feel like Singlish captures the spirit of this. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very Singaporean poem. I can like really understand it. Reminds me of like very Singaporean communication with my friends. Yeah. So
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so that's very interesting. And like one thing about the previous poem, like if you are comfortable to like talk about the poem as a poem,
Mm.
so I'd like to ask is this, this notion, how you have used hands in the poem as the word, that's really kind of moving. So what is this hand? So for example, I can share my like view of the word. There is kind of the sense of power, the sense of like the power that oppresses, that kind of takes you down, that keeps you shut, quiet. And like also I think I have heard from like, I obviously from female friends and like who have experienced that is that this sense of like stay quiet and like just get over with it, something like this thing that always moved me quite a lot, and I'd say like disturbed me quite a lot, like this thing that I've heard again and again in poems, in personal like memories and of this event. So what do you think about that? Like what does it, from where does this thought or this trigger comes in? Like stay quiet, just get over with it. What's
Um, are you like it's okay? Can I just check that you're asking about like what was the trigger for this poem, or like
yeah.
for the use
Or
of
this
imagery?
specific part of like using the hand as the symbol and like hand to keep you quiet and like
Mm.
this imaging.
I guess I focused on the imagery because I wanted it to be both literal and figurative, and the like how the like it seems like an innocent thing, but it can be heavily distorted through the lens of this act of violence. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, well, that's an interesting poem. I think that's an interesting way of putting it. So it was about your school or university in Singapore?
Yeah, so the National University of Singapore is complicit in a lot of yeah, in a lot of
Yeah,
acts of
yeah,
violence.
also in LLB, so
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I can understand. I can understand the set of events kind of. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So means that was like something, yeah, a bit, what I can say, like unexpected. That's a bit a pity. Like that's sad.
Mm.
Yeah. So I can understand. Yeah. Yeah, but like this is, I think people are talking about that and people are trying to like work on that, and like I think the young people who has this voice, they're using their voice quite nicely nowadays, which is very like interesting, motivating. Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Thank you for your questions.
Yeah. So next we'll like to move to our next poet, Julie. So yeah,
Hi, hello again.
yeah, the stage is again yours. Like, please feel free to go with your poem.
Okay, I wrote this poem just like a love story of a lady and a gentleman, but with a twist. I originally write this one for my sister who went home in heaven when she was 6 years old, and she's having a 30th birthday today. So I start reading now.
Yeah,
The title of my
can you?
poem is My Angel's Visit. You came visit me at my house with flowers and chocolates in your hands. You look at me with chickenness, with a lovely smile on your eyes. You act so differently. When I asked you, seriously, you just displayed me with your grin so widely. Then you come so near to me and hugs me so tightly. I was about to cry when I feel your body so cold like an ice. I pushed you with all my might, but I cannot touch you anymore. You slowly disappeared. I shouted your name. You can't hear me. I ran as fast as I can. I was breathing so heavily and passed out. When I woke up, I was on my bed, wet with my sweat. Oh, my angel, I miss you too. Thank you.
So yeah, thank you for the poem. So how would I consider it? Like, would I consider it as an elegy or as a love poem, or how? How would I like? How do you like to think of it?
Because a man always visit a lady with a flowers and chocolate, and my sister and I always love chocolates when she was still alive, and we always pluck flowers. That's the one I wrote about.
Yes. Yeah, and sorry to know about like your sister. Like, yeah, thank you for sharing such a like personal, yeah,
Yes,
touch of poetry. Yeah, so as we can see, like again, one more question is like, as we can see from the previous poem and this poem, like you like to put in words this personal memories, personal events, like, and recount them in your poetry, right? So like, how do you feel your poetry as an expression? Is it like the catharesis, as you said, like as a way of putting it or channelizing your personal memories, or how would you like to
yes.
think of
Most of my poem is for my personal emotions, to express my emotions out, because I don't want to keep it in my heart. If you keep it in your heart, it's so heavy. So you need to have an outlet, to express that emotion, to make your hearts lighter. I think that's my way of writing my poem.
it? Yeah, I think that's very interesting, and that's why like you started to share it after the pandemic, for because people are also in this situation. Is that
Yes,
like your motivation to start, sharing your poems after pandemic?
yes,
Okay, that's very nice. That's very interesting. I think like uh, all of our poetries are somewhere personal. Just we hide it with different words and imageries in different ways. I think that's our
yes, yes,
styles, as the people call
yes.
it. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah. So next, like we'll again move from Julie to Nice, and like yeah, we'll like to listen to her poem and yeah, her second poem and the thoughts. Nice. You are still in mute. So nice, can you hear us? You are still in mute.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So now
My
is it
second
fine?
my second poem is a prayer.
Okay.
This is about the pandemic because
Mhm.
everybody any country now is got to have the pandemic, the COVID-19. So I hope the God is take the pandemic is that one is pandemic is the good one. Okay.
Mhm.
Then now I can start reading now.
Yeah, sure.
Doa. Ya Tuhan, kami adalah umat-Mu yang sedang dilanda musibah pandemik. Kami sedang menjalani perang, di mana perang tersebut melawan cobaan ujian-Mu. Kami tidak mampu untuk menolaknya. Sedangkan kami makhluk-Mu yang sangat lemah. Ya Tuhan, sehat adalah milik-Mu. Kekuatan juga milik-Mu. Bahkan dunia ini adalah dalam genggaman-Mu, dalam genggaman kekuasaan-Mu. Ya Tuhan, kami sedang dalam ketakutan yang bersembunyi di bawah atap rumah, berlindung di dalam masker-masker, hingga kami takut akan keluar rumah. Ya Tuhan, jika COVID ini adalah utusan-Mu, maka singkirkan dari rasa takut-Mu. Ya Tuhan, jika COVID adalah rezeki dari-Mu, jangan berikan kami rasa keraguan untuk menerima takdir-Mu. Ya Tuhan, sesungguhnya hanya kepadamu aku berlindung. Hanya kepadamu aku meminta pertolongan. Ya Tuhan, yang kami butuhkan hanyalah kekuatan dalam menghadapi cobaan-Mu. Yang kami butuhkan kesabaran, ketabahan, kesungguhan pengabdian kepadamu. Ya Tuhan, ampunilah segala dosa kami. Astagfirullahaladzim. 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 Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing the poem. Yeah, thank you for sharing like your prayers to all of us during this pandemic. Yeah, I think that's like really valuable for every one of us, given everyone is stuck in this pandemic somehow. Yeah, and everyone wants to know when it will end. This is quite a bit of disaster mentally, physically, and everywhere. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. So like as I would like to ask is this, that what do you think is like is the, how can I say, weakest point where this pandemic has hurt us? Like, is it our like fears, as you have said, like that is the most weak point that this pandemic has hurt, or like this is just another way of knowing ourselves better? What do you think? Like, because these are the two aspects I found out in the poem, like one where you talked about that the fear, that it is the weak point and the pandemic is hitting us, and the other point is like it is a way to know or get more strength out of ourselves. So what do you think is your view?
My thinking is I hope to the God uh, take this is pandemic, then so the situation, the condition, or the country normally like before like that. So
Mhm.
I pray for everyone, every country like this.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you so
And
much.
very nice to know that you pray for all of us. Thank you. Yeah. So from nice, we'll move next to Karisa, and yeah, we'll move to our next poet, Karisa. So what's the next poem that you have for us?
Okay, yeah, the next poem, I don't really have a title for it yet because I'm quite bad at thinking of titles, um, but I'll just go into it.
Sure.
Awaiting biopsy results, I am thankful for the bruise on my mother's elbow, the scabs on mine. I am thankful for the body that heals, storyteller moonlighting as academic, mentor as mother, archivist as counselor, emancipator as lawyer, activist as scapegoat, for labor organizations and subverters of system, for collectives, collective actions, and calls to action. How sick is the virus that ails us, then tells us we are healthier for it. And the next short one that I'm going to read is called A Gamble. When she decided to invest in my father, it was love at first, cost benefit analysis, family, occupation, values, amounting positive net worth. Before I was deposited at the school gates, she calculated risks and returns of a third pair of hands, raising her flesh and blood. I learned to be wary of inflation, but never how to budget vulnerability, forgiveness, labor. If you ever wonder who is doing the work, follow the cash flow. I have always lived to repay debts. Thank you.
Thank you. That's been really a nice poem. Like yeah, yeah. So hmm. Yeah, so that's been like really a nice one. Like so yeah, and the two poems I think so to me they're like very contrastive kind of like contexts that you are talking about are very different. One is like so yeah, this quote unquote normalcy which is not very normal, the yes second one, and the one is like the new normal or the the life we are going through during the pandemic. And yeah, that's very interesting. So what's your take? Typically, people always say during this pandemic when it would be normal again, when it would be like we'll be back to normalcy. So what do you think of that? Because the second one is about the normal life we have already like lead typically. So
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I never really thought about these two poems as like being very connected, but that's a really interesting kind of way to draw them together. Yeah, and I guess for the first one, I was thinking about like it was during the pandemic, and it came out of this fear of something that was incurable, um, that made me really happy. Like I had some like scars on my elbow, and I saw a bruise on my mother's elbow, and I got really emotional looking at those, at the scars and at the bruises, because it meant that your body was still healing, and that's what's so scary about the things about, like, for example, coronavirus, or even other like terminal or chronic illnesses that may not be curable. And I kind of got me thinking to kind of our larger social and economic political ecosystem, um, and how, like, what's so insidious about it is, because it's the fact that you can't always tell that it's like the society or the world is like sick in some way, you know, like we tell ourselves this narrative of like progress, you know, that you should be happy to be alive now because, you know, it was so much worse, you know, 50 years ago or 100 years ago or, you know, whatever. And, you know, do we really know that? Or, you know, have we just been told that like, you know, it's better now, so we need to you know, and that's what's scary to me, you know, that we don't even want to look at, you know, what is wrong because we believe, you know, that everything is good.
Yep. Yeah. I think that is the whole like sales story of modernity, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's how it is sold, like, yeah, to every one of us. Like, yeah. So we are
yeah,
going to like
absolutely.
development, progress. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and how, you know, even a lot of like medicines that we have, you know, a lot of the times the same companies who are providing the medicines are also creating the problems, you know, and that's what's insidious to me. um,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like that's quite fearful in a sense, like so that you are vulnerable to this system so much, like, yeah. And maybe like you or us, like, or you know, normal human beings may not survive, the system survives. And like I think that's the most survival kind of scenario that we can see around us nowadays. Yeah, that's very interesting. And what about the second point, like how you'd like to put it?
yeah, I guess the second poem I was kind of thinking about how um, maybe perhaps in my family and maybe with you know, I see this in a lot of other people and in myself as well, you know, this tendency to think about relationships in terms of, you know, cost benefit, in terms of gains and, you know, like what can you gain and what do you lose, and you know how we break people down into what they can give us, you know, what they can provide to us, or how they will be beneficial to us. And, you know, I think it's a side effect of living under capitalism, you know, that is somewhat unavoidable, but at the same time, you know, but there's so many things that, you know, that we lose track of and we don't know how to, you know, maybe calculate, if you can, you know, say that, you know, in some ways, like vulnerability, like forgiveness, you know, like forms of like emotional labor, you know, how do you quantify that? um, and, you know, maybe also in terms of how uh, the more we try to think about what can somebody give us, you know, we lose the opportunity of making a like connection, you know, like we always think about like, you know, like I find myself thinking when I'm making a friend, for example, you know, like how likely is this person to like stay in my life or to be, or is this connection going to be useful in terms of my own personal goals, you know, and that's such a scary way, you know, like scary and somewhat like unproductive. Like we tell ourselves that that's a productive way of seeing relationships and seeing people, like by what we can gain from them. And at the same time, you know, I think in chasing that, you know, it becomes unproductive because, you know, we lose a lot of opportunities for connection.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, and I think that's really a good point. That's something parallel to this, like parallel to poetry, what I talk often in some of the courses. So I basically work on this kind of, you know, the statistics, game theory, and all this kind of stuff. So there we often say this, like this has been proved maybe 40, 50 years ago, but still people don't understand if everyone wants to optimize their utility, their, you know, gain, their thing. As a society, as a whole, as a group, you will always end up into a very suboptimal solution, like a very suboptimal situation. and which can be really far from the ideal world and far from what actually these people can achieve together, like very far from that. Rather, this is harmful if you see, like even under very rational circumstances of mathematics, like you will see it is very bad as a solution, it is very bad decision. And given the human consequences, this is, I think, even far more bad. Yeah. So maybe someday everyone will understand. Thank you. Thank you for, yeah, sharing such two nice and deep poems. So now, next I'll move to our next poet. We'll move to Reza, and yeah, and we'll like to know more about his poems. So you are in mute.
Yes, now unmute.
Yeah, but your video is closed now.
Unmute. Okay.
Yeah, now it's fine. Yeah. So what's the next poem we have from you? Like you want to write it?
Now I want to read my poem, The Door. But
Mm.
if you give me chance, I can read first my original Bangla. If
Yes, sure.
Bangla, in Bangla, you know, দরজা, আমাদের এখন বাইরে যেতে হবে। ঘরটা ভীষণ শীতল এবং অন্ধকার। কয়েদি সেলের মতো সংকীর্ণ দরজা। প্রিয় স্বজনের কণ্ঠস্বর আমরা শুনতে পাচ্ছি, অনুভবে তাদের অস্তিত্ব টের পাচ্ছি, স্পর্শে অবয়ব, কিন্তু দেখতে পাচ্ছি না কাউকে। একথা বিশ্বাস করি না যে সব অন্ধকারে মানুষকে দেখা যায় না, বরং কোনো কোনো অন্ধকারে মানুষের মুখ খুব প্রজ্জ্বল হয়ে ওঠে, বেশি পরিচিত। দেখতে না পাওয়ার অন্তরায়, অন্ধকার নয়, বাইরে না যাওয়ার কারণ নয় সংকীর্ণ দরজা, বরং আমাদের চেতনায় অনুপস্থিত প্রত্যেকের মুখ। এবং অস্বীকার করি না যে দরজাটা সত্যিই অনুপযোগী, তবু আমাদের এখন বাইরে যেতে হবে, দরজাটা ভেঙে হোক কিংবা ঘরটা। Now I read English version, the translation, The Door. Now we shall have to move out. The room is terribly cold and dark. The door is narrow as in a prisoner's cell. We are hearing the voice of our dear ones and feeling their presence in our consciousness, and can touch their outlines but can see nothing. I do not believe that all darkness makes man invisible. Rather, in particular kind of darkness, men's faces appear all the brighter and more recognizable. Darkness is no obstacle to invisibility. The narrow doorway is not the reason for the inability to move out. Rather, every face is absent from our consciousness. And I do not disagree that the door is really unstable. Yet we shall have to move out, either crashing through the room or the door. Thanks.
Thank you for reading that poem. So, what is the analogy of door here? Like, so the
The
door is
door, because door is a obstacle to our life and our dream. So we have to break the door. We have to crash the door, or we have to crash the room. We have to crash everything to go out, to move out, because we need light, we need love, we need humanity. So we have to crush the darkness and which is our struggle from in front of us, like door or room. We have to crush. This is
Mhm.
my idea.
Okay, so this is kind of a call for like change, a call for like, moving forward, call for going.
Yeah, and I think this pandemic situation is very. If you uh, 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 think that the poem, you can say, we can read in pandemic situation this poem. We can tell that in this situation this is the perfect one. And I think that the in second round, who is the first poet, he uttered similarly, fucking. So I remember some poet of Americans. You know him, the famous poet in America, uh, who wrote some lines. America, fuck yourself with your atom. Allen Ginsberg is a famous. So this generation, they are very aggressive in what, in their culture, in their talking about everything. So, and that they are trying to change our tradition all over the world. So I think that uh, we never forget uh, humankind. We never forget humanity. We never forget our tradition. If a poet forget his tradition, he never be a good poet. I think so. Uh, I can remember our T.S. Eliot. He said that tradition is a matter of much wider significance. It, you can
Mm-hmm.
you cannot be inherited, and if you want it, you must obtain it by great labor, because you have to earn your tradition by great labor. So every poet uh, makes his tradition newly, and he can put something, he can put his labor, honestly. I remember T.S. W.B. Yeats. In pandemic situation, we can uh, uh, utter his poem, we can share his poem, uh, Turning and Turning, the name of second coming. It's also T.S. Eliot's poem, Turning and Turning in the Widening Gyre. Falcon cannot hear falconer, things fall apart, center cannot hold, mere anarchy loosed upon the world. You know, in our pandemic situation, the world is like that, I can say. So we have to go out, we have to move out, and I do not fear COVID-19. I do not fear, uh, because I am very strong in my soul, in my heart, and in my belief. So I never fear, because but we have to use also masks, sanitizer, everything, everywhere. But I think that those who are multinational company, they have some politics here, and they could uh, they want to sell their masks, sanitizer, everything. And after some time, when they will invent, what can I say, another uh, medicine, uh, they will sell all over the world, and they're becoming rich and rich and rich. So those who are poor men, they're suffering, they have some trouble. I think so. The poet have to protest. Poet have to tell truth, because poet is the ambassador of nation. I think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your views about the situation, about your perspectives. And yeah, that's interesting to know. Like, yeah, we as poets at different places, like we have different perspectives to the scenario. And like, I think what I find common in this all these perspectives is a thrive to move out of it, to grow out of it, and yeah, to like make life for every one of us a better place. Yeah, where it is not controlled with the like with the machinery that is beyond our imagination, beyond us, beyond our empathy. So I think that's one of the points we all protest and we all agree as poets. Yeah, so thank you for sharing like such different perspectives of the scenario and such different, yeah, style of poetries. And as I can see, like, you know, we also had in this session, and I think we mostly like to have in Carnival is like when people from different countries, different backgrounds, different situations, different ages start to talk about poetry, you see this different interesting like kaleidoscopic view. Like it is like a kaleidoscope, from whichever angle you see the same thing, but you see something different. And
Yeah,
that's always interesting about poetry, and that's always interesting. But still you can find out something common, like, you know, this poets, I think, always have this urge to grow up, to change, and like to have a better world, have a better system. And I think we all are some kind of dreamers, but yeah, we are not alone, obviously, as we can see here. Yeah, so that's very nice, that's very interesting, and I like to like summarize or end this session with one of, again, the very very old poems. But again, this session really reminds me of that. So
thank
this,
you.
yeah,
Please read.
the younger days. So there was a series that I think Zakir Bhai knows, like when we started this Migrant tales kind of, or even before that, like when he was like in the competition, and yeah, we made sometime. There used to be artistry in Singapore, which is not there anymore. Yeah, so we made there, and after that, like I was thinking of this series, that poetry. So there was a time when people are saying, you know, like poetry is dead. There's this new form of like literatures we need, where either it becomes more lyrical or it becomes more slam. But you know, poetry as a form of thing in modernity, it is kind of, you know, too much romantic for modernity. So then I thought of like writing a series about like each of very normal person in this city, uh, who we meet, like some person in hawker center, some traffic police, someone, and like how their lives are even poetry. So this kind of started this Poetry is Not Dead series. And again, being, you know, poets are bad with their projects, so like I wrote 10, and then I was like, yeah, wrote enough, so left it. So but yeah, this is the first, or this is the poem I'd like to kind of end with. Even after this pandemic, I think this poetry is not dead, rather it is more alive and like booming, and we are understanding its value again and again. Poetry is not dead till the flowers blossom, the fresh air passing through the narrow passages of skyscrapers whisper the song of the forgotten roads to your home. Poetry is not dead till you fall in love with that girl with dreamy eyes and propose her with a piece of Neruda or just another leaflet, knowing something so perfect never lasts. When she leaves without looking back and your pain feels as real as the taste of blood hustling out after the first knockout, you know it. You know it better. Poetry is not dead. Poetry is not dead till you create a life with the blotted ink and parchment paper. Sometimes you wonder how fleeting is that in the face of this immortal universe. But still you can't stop bleeding through the nib of your old fountain pen. Then you know poetry is not dead. When you see the daring lovers kissing in the Tahrir Square in front of the monstrous system whose pride of power shadows the sun, when the wildflower blooms from the unwanted corners of Wall Street even, and dares to look into the eyes of the sun, then you know, in this world of prose, poetry is still not dead. Yep. So again, that was in 2015. So you can see all the events, all the allegories are like of those time. Like it's, I think, a long ago. Like if I think of these events, but I think the essence, what kind of is there even after this pandemic, even after this crisis, I think, yeah, poetry is still alive even in between us. As we are all writing, we are trying to uh, give words to our emotions, our situations. So it will always be there, as there is a universal human existence. So now the floor is free. If any of you poets want to share anything before like saying adieu, like yeah, please feel free.
Thank you, Jakir. I can say that our this is our the poetry carnival. It is very beautiful and wonderful section, and I hear uh, all. I'll hear some poem from other languages, other different countries' poets. Yeah, this is very good, and I want to share with them my feeling. And I say at last I say some lines I can share from Robert Frost. Woods are lovely, dark and deep. We have promised to keep miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep. And Robert Frost said that poetry is easy to love but hard to understand. This is the main thing I think so. We can love poetry, though it is hard to understand, but we can love uh, poetry. The poetry is our life, poetry is our dream. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reza, for sharing your thoughts. And yeah, I think like Carnival goes on miles after this. Like we have almost completed like 2.5 years. I think like there's more, like 10 times more years ahead.
Thank
Yeah. And Karisa, Irie, anyone nice if you want to share something?
I only just want to say thank you so much. I hear the first time to join with the uh, poem. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the same thing, that it's been really great to hear everybody's work, and being able to share this, virtual space, but also in a very like vulnerable and intimate way, despite being, I think we're all over the world right now, right? Like some of us are in Singapore, you're in France. Yeah, so it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Irie, if you want to. You are in mute.
Oh, yeah, no, just thank you for sharing your poetry and being vulnerable, and also responding to the poems that have been shared here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, poets. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Zakir, for helping us to organize. Thanks to migrant writers of Singapore, like that always is the organizer of this. Thanks to SingLit Station to support us. Thanks to Wanting for supporting us to arrange this. And yeah, thanks to Sharon for like doing a promotion video of this. Yeah, and promoting this event. So we'll come back again with Carnival of Poetry on next month on the last Sunday, on the fourth Sunday, as we always do. Okay, so till then, stay healthy, stay well, and have a nice time, everyone. See you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye. Thank you.
you. See you, Jackie. Thanks very much.